Strange. Great. All right. Well, welcome, Dr. Phil. Really excited to have you on a live stream today. We're going to be doing the
Thank you.
Hint Summit preview and talk a little bit about kind of what's going on as we head out to Colorado this fall. It's really excited to have you here. As a quick introduction, kind of housekeeping, I'm Alex George. I'm the head of marketing here at Hint Health, and we're excited. We like to make these as engaging as possible. This one's going to be a little bit more of us sharing with you what's going on, but if you have questions, you can drop them into the chat or on your social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Love to have you. Let me introduce you, Dr. Phil.
Phil Boucher. I am a pediatrician in Lincoln, Nebraska. I started my DPC practice almost 3 years ago now. Like 3 years ago exactly, I was in the thick of like, what am I going to do in 2022 when I start my practice? And it was like figuring out all the DPC stuff. So I love helping other DPC doctors and connecting with other DPC doctors. So I'm super excited to be a part of this year's Hint Summit.
Yeah, and along those lines, you are going to be our MC this year for Hint Summit, which is really exciting. And for anyone who doesn't know Dr. Phil personally, definitely recommend, especially as a DPC physician, following him on social media. He's very engaging, very engaged with his patients, with a community, and just love to see the kind of stuff he puts out there. So, yeah. As we jump into things though here, so what we wanted to start off this conversation a little bit with is just kind of sharing some stories about Hint Summit. And I think for you, you've attended one in the past, and so I'd love to hear more about your experience and kind of what that was like.
Yeah, so I got to go last year to San Diego, and first of all, I always tell people, and I think like we recorded some ads and things. One of the things that was the most memorable, other than the venue and the speakers and the connections, was the food. Like the food was really good. So I haven't got to see the menus or anything. Like I think as MC, I'm sure that at some point I'll get to approve all the menus, but I haven't done that yet. But I can assure you that the food will be top notch, like it was last year, or they will hear about it every time I get a microphone in my hand.
Yeah.
But I think for me, one of the things was really connecting with others, because DPC is a little bit lonely. You go from your employed job or working in a larger group where you have a bunch of other people and staff and people to connect with. And all of a sudden, like most people start and it's just them, or it's just them and their office manager, their nurse or MA or something along those lines. And so having a connection to others that are doing the same thing really makes it easier to feel like you're not alone and that other people are going through it and they get the different struggles there are and the different joys and like the small things. In your previous life, having one new patient sign up wasn't really a big deal. You were probably like, oh, more patients to see. And now like getting that email, like I mean, every morning at, I don't know what time, 8 o'clock or so, the email rolls in of like, from Hint of like 1 new patient joined your practice or 4 new patients joined your practice. Like those feel so good. And so having somebody and a group of people that you can connect and share with really makes a big difference. And so I think that was one of my takeaways last year, was just being surrounded by other people. Like we would go have dinner and we'd still be talking about our practice in the evening and like all the different little tweaks and questions that people have when it comes to getting their practice started or growing their practice. How do you do this? How do you do that? Like we would keep talking about that because it's interesting and we want to help each other. I think that was the other thing that I took away from that, was everybody wants to help everyone else out. It's not like we're competition, and it's not like only one person can win. We all can win. And so it's really that kind of like rising tides lifts all boats. Like we're all helping to raise each other's boats by, helping each other and connecting and making people feel a little bit less alone when it comes to starting and growing their DPC.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think one thing that you called out is kind of the communal aspect of things and being able to connect with other like-minded people, folks who are going through the same challenges, or maybe they're new and you have the opportunity to share and learn and express some opportunity to grow there.
Right.
I think one thing that Hint tries to do is we're trying to build an online community as well. And we have a Hint community, which is growing and it's doing well, but at the same time, it doesn't ever beat that in-person face-to-face experience. So always looking for more opportunities to get together. And that's a big part of why we started Hint Summit almost 9 years ago now. Was the first one was just to bring these people together and talk about what's happening in the industry, share some shared experiences and grow together. So really excited about that. For me personally, I went to my first Hint Summit in 2022. At the time, it was in Denver as well. It was in kind of the Rhino district, and at that time, I had been working with Hint in more of a kind of contractor model
Okay.
for quite some time, and I was really getting turned on to this industry and what it was doing for both patients, but also for the physicians that were making the changeover. And after attending Hint Summit 2022, that's when I realized I'm like, this is something I want to put my effort behind. This I want to join Hint in a full time capacity. I want to be a part of the solution. And so for me, it was really seeing all of that come together and the direction that the industry was going as a whole and being able to make that decision. I agree. I think Hint Summit has been a catalyzing kind of event for many people who've attended, and we're excited to bring it back this year to Colorado.
Well, I'm sure it's really different too for you at Hint, because I mean, I know you guys do lots of get-togethers, and there's a very like forward culture at Hint, but being together, not just as a team, but getting to see your clients, essentially all of the people that use your service. I bet that's really cool too, to just be able to see the actual people that are on the ground using what you are behind the scenes creating and fixing and iterating on all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is majority clinicians that are attending, but over the past 2, 3 years, we have had kind of an increase in other direct primary care stakeholders, right? So
Mhm.
employers that are curious about it, what's going on, or advisors and benefits brokers, people who want to figure out how to work DPC into the solutions and the plans they're building,
Right.
and other technology providers, people who are also here to help drive the industry forward. So very much so meeting with our different customers, partners, things of that nature, but also just introducing people to the cause and kind of what we're doing.
Nice. And this
So yeah,
year, so last year was on the pier, and this year the venue is obviously not on a pier in the middle of Colorado, but
yeah, this year's a little bit different. So we've been able to lock in the location. It's called the Infinity Park Event Center. It's a really tech forward, tech savvy event space that's in kind of like southern Denver area there, just outside of Denver. It's gonna be September 27th and 28th. And we're really excited. This venue not only is it super cool, it also doubles kind of adjacent to it is a rugby field, which is awesome. And there's kind of an events and outdoor space where we're gonna have our meals, a lot of kind of some different breakout rooms, things of that nature. It's just a really, really cool venue. We're excited to kind of get things going. So again, that's going to be September 27th and 28th. If you haven't already got a ticket, you can actually jump in and get that today. We have some promo codes available. Our team will float through. That'll give you a little bit of a discount as well. And then our hotel block is starting to fill up. So if you're someone who's already signed up and just looking to learn more, make sure to go and book your hotel room as soon as possible. In terms of kind of this year's theme, what our goal here is, and what we're trying to do, kind of running into the past previous years, is elevating healthcare and talk about DPC's kind of rise to the mainstream. So really, that's what we're looking to kind of bring to light through different tracks that we're going to be talking about as well.
right. I think like for me, and then I'll ask you like what you think it means to you, that the theme of climbing into the mainstream. I feel like, and I remember distinctly this slide at last year's summit was like where DPC is on the growth trajectory, like from the 2010s to now in the mid 2020s. Where I think it's definitely at that like hockey stick portion where it just kind of is going up and up and up. And in pediatrics, I think pediatrics is a little bit behind, but it's also getting to that inflection point where it starts to go like that too. So I think the elevation to the mainstream is both, it's becoming something that most people are familiar with or at least have heard about, and also elevating the way that we're able to provide healthcare. I think it hits on both of those things. Like we're able to provide a different level of healthcare than a traditional fee-for-service practice, and also it's getting to be so mainstream that people know about it and are familiar with it. And the thing that I like is it holds the typical practice accountable for improving healthcare, because to keep up with DPC, they have to iterate too, and they have to be doing things better and providing an improved patient experience, providing improved healthcare, because there's a new player on the block that's offering something that in the past they haven't been. So even those that are not yet in the DPC world should benefit from more mainstream DPC, because they're seeing, we got to start offering this, we got to start treating patients like this, or they're just going to leave for our competitors that are already in DPC. What about you, Alex, in terms of what that climb to mainstream kind of means from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we've just seen astounding growth in direct primary care, and we're excited to share some numbers at this year's summit about around that growth actually, and kind of what it's been looking like. Also, we have some really cool kind of trends reports and topics we're going to touch on with regards to a person-centered primary care measure and a study that's actually currently live. We have a pilot study that's running and next week, but we're going to be able to share some results, and that's going to be, to your point, being able to put us alongside or next to kind of fee for service and compare the two and say like how different and how beneficial is this type of care that we're able to provide. And so
Yeah.
really excited to share some of those things at the summit and talk about, really, that's the idea, is, hey, how do we educate the masses a little bit more around what direct primary care can do, how it can change the world for employers even, which is a really hot topic, and making sure they understand the benefit of DPC and why it's an added benefit that they can, build a health plan around, which is really cool. So we're going to be touching on a lot of different things, and I think we can kind of jump into that actually, which is kind of cool. But one question I wanted to ask you before we talk about some of the content is, what are you most excited about for this year's summit?
For me, a couple. One, I think like the two different tracks and areas is really a cool way for people that are new or DPC curious or just getting started, but then also those that have been in it a little bit longer and are looking more from an advocacy perspective of how can I help to grow the DPC movement. Like my practice is getting on the fuller side, but I still want to be there. I want to connect with others, and I also want to help grow the movement. I think I touched on this earlier a little bit, but it can be lonely in DPC. Like you don't have a lot of people locally that you can connect with and that get it, like what you're going through and the way that you're starting your practice or growing your practice and caring for patients. And so the opportunity to come together and see other people that are doing similar things to you. Every DPC practice is its own animal and works in its own specific ways, but see people that have the same mission and the same drive and the same care as you. Like DPC doctors are a very special group because they've made a lot of decisions that buck what usually people are doing and the regular way of, just the way it's always been done. And so being able to connect with them and get to make those connections, be in person, spend time away from clinic, all of those things I'm looking forward to. And then just to hear from so many other really interesting practice owners and also people that are in industry and government and all of those different things about what's going on outside of my little bubble in DPC and what the future in the next year and years holds for DPC. So those are, I think, the things that I'm most excited about. I will be honest with you, I've never emceed an event before. And so I'm also excited to learn how to MC an event and what all that looks like. I've watched enough, videos and things like that to have a good sense of it, but actually doing it myself and holding the mic, or I don't know, maybe I'll even get a mic that I wear like Madonna or something like that. I'm just excited to learn about being an MC too.
You're gonna be great at that. I love it. There's a talk that I'm actually really excited for you to listen into. Then our mutual friend Lauren Tancredi is going to be in a talk around building local DPC communities. So it sounds like in your location where maybe there isn't as much of a true DPC presence, how do you create that community that is revolving around the DPC? I think that's gonna be a really cool talk, and one I'm particularly interested in.
Love it.
So you mentioned what we're doing. We have two different tracks that we're going to be running. Now, one thing I want to call out, these are not going to be those kind of concurrent tracks where you need to pick one or the other.
Right.
We just have two different column themes or topics that we're going to be running as tracks throughout Hint Summit. So the first track is actually called, oops, I didn't mean to do that. The first track is called a thriving practice. And the idea around this whole track is that we're going to have different talks from speakers, DPC leadership, owners, people that have done it and can share kind of what they've done and how they were able to be successful in their practice. This is really meant to be for those practices that are, early stage or going through growth spurt and are looking for ways to really create more efficiency in their practice and grow it into, more than just a practice, but an actual business, right? And so oftentimes hyper focus on your practice, but what does it mean when you want to, add additional service offerings or expand into a new location, things of that nature, and you become more of a business at that point. So these talks are going to be great. One I'm really excited about is Dr. Jade Norris with Inspire out of out of Las Vegas. She's going to be talking about a topic that I know oftentimes comes up when people are thinking about DPC, and that's around life design and DPC
Mm.
balance. Is that something that you can touch on a little bit?
Yeah, I think actually life design is really something that a lot of physicians are not prepared for, is like you have some control over your schedule and the way you do it in DPC because you don't have all these administrators telling you what you have to do. And so how can we design a practice that works within the bounds of my life and supports me being a physician, but also being a father and a husband and like trying to learn pickleball and all these different things. Like you can integrate those things into your life if you're intentional about it. And I know Dr. Norris has done a great job of that. At least that would be what I'm led to believe by her TikToks and Instagram and Facebook presence that I get to see, is that she does a really good job of that. But it's something that DPC, I think it lends itself to feeling like you're always going to be on call, and that makes people stop and say, I don't know if I want to care for my patients in that way where I'm available that much. But I think once you talk with DPC doctors and learn what it is actually like on the ground, you'll find that their lifestyle is so much better than a fee-for-service practice for so many different reasons, but mostly because you have control. You can teach your patients the best ways to reach out to you. You can practice those boundaries, and the practices that are really successful, both from a practice success metric standpoint, but also that the clinicians and owners are enjoying the practice, put those boundaries in place and practice those boundaries on a regular basis. And so I'm excited to hear Dr. Norris's perspective on all of that.
I'm excited. A few other talks I'm really kind of looking forward to as a marketer, and yourself as a big marketing fan, if you will. We're going to be doing a talk. It's called A Mile Deep. It's around identifying and speaking to that target audience, and thinking about how your target audience and your kind of core member profile changes over time based on introducing new service offerings or changing locations, a new location, whatever that may be. So that'll be really interesting. Excited about that. We're going to talk a little bit about best practices when adding new services and how to think about your DPC. I think, is that something that you've done in your practice?
Yes, and that's what I love doing. My staff are like probably like, I think we have enough services, Phil. You probably don't need any more services. But I keep finding things in the community that we're lacking, and then we're like, well, we can do that. Ear piercing, autism evaluations, ADHD evaluations. We have therapists in our practice, which I know there's another talk about mental health and direct primary care and all of that. But those are things that we found lacking in the community. And then we bring those on as new service lines and membership types that we're able to then grow as ways both to diversify our membership portfolio when it comes to what patients have, what sort of service lines, but also to provide for the community needs. Like there's a really long wait to get an autism evaluation in our area. And we said, well, I think we can do that. And so we do that now. And a bunch of different things like that. But it does take a little bit of thinking outside the box and then figuring out all of the nitty gritty things of like, how are you going to schedule it? How much are you going to charge? How are patients going to find out about it? All of those different things that come when you're expanding into other areas outside of the direct primary care membership.
Yeah, absolutely. Along the same kind of lines of growth is what happens when your panel's full? What are different ideas to grow your practice? You touched on this briefly, but we're going to have a whole topic around direct primary care and mental health and diving into that a little bit. And then one that
That's
I'm
something
really
that I love. We have 4 therapists in our office now, and it's been such a great way both to employ people, to provide for our patients that have mental health concerns that we want to address inside our practice rather than referring them out and having them go somewhere else, as a revenue stream, as foot traffic, all of the different check boxes. Having those in the practice really makes a huge difference. So I'm a huge advocate for bringing those things inside when you can.
Awesome. I love that. And then the one other one that I'm really excited about too, Dr. Andrew Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
So he's going to be talking. He just brings such an excitement to his practice and his speaking, and he's just really engaging character. But he's going to be talking about the transition from a physician to a business leader, and what it's like to create a strong clinical culture. Which I'm really excited about that talk. I think that's going to be one that folks are going to really enjoy and take a lot away.
He'll be so good for that too. I didn't know that's who was speaking on that, but he'll be so good for that because he has really grown his practice. I know he has a ton of patients and several clinicians, and I think several locations, and that requires like you to really like move from the bedside to the boardroom sort of perspective of how am I as the owner going to be CEO and make sure all these different people are doing things they need to. And it does become a lot about building a strong culture. So I'm super excited to hear that he's giving that talk.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, going over to our second track, we're calling Direct Primary Care Elevation. So this is more about talks, panels, case studies, discuss the challenges and solutions around scaling DPC to really compete in mainstream healthcare. So we're going to share some really cool stories about a state in Wisconsin where DPC is becoming the center of the healthcare change there. And it's really cool to see how successful it's growing to become. We're going to be talking about, opportunities and challenges that come along with growing. Even from things as simple as, naming conventions, right? And like how we talk about certain things and our industry on the same page, to much broader ideas like, hey, how do we report out? How do we show the value and things of that nature, and pulling ideas around like the PCPCM survey.
Yeah.
We're going to have some employers. They're going to share a little bit about their personal experience, why they decided to offer direct primary care to their employees, and what that experience has been like. Going to dive into kind of more of the supporting cast around DPC at scale. So what are some of the other technology companies or other organizations that are built to work alongside direct primary care when you think about, working with employers and those types of things. And then one that I'm really excited about actually is around kind of, it's a case study actually with a DPC owner and also their kind of health plan group advisors, and they're going to be talking about the perspective and the ideas around implementing DPC for like a multiple regional group. So this group in particular, they worked with Hint Connect, and I think they have something like 20 locations or maybe a few less than that, where they had employers across 7 or 8 states, and just a cool story about like how it all comes together and works to be successful for that employer. So a lot of different things on that end.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm really interested in that too, because I think a lot of times you'll form these really strong relationships with specific patients that work for a really cool institution, but they're not just local. And then like, how do you convince them to let the DPC in the doors of the local branch versus the whole region, or like a multinational company or something like that? There's so many nuances to that I'm excited to hear about that, because that's something that we've struggled with when we've been trying to work with employers, is kind of like, we have really good contacts with some of the people at local companies, but they have to take care of their whole network across the country or across a whole region. So that sounds awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So I mean, that doesn't cover all the talks, but that's quite a few of them with regards to those two kind of tracks. One of the other items, we touched on this a little bit, but we're going to be discussing some different trends in DPC. We're going to share some results from the person-centered primary care survey. We're going to get an update from the Hill from Jay Keese, and then Mariel Concepcion is going to come up on stage and talk about how you can get involved as either in your local community, on the state level, nationally, whatever that may be. So it's gonna be really cool conversations around truly like bringing DPC and elevating it to a national scale. And then we get into our keynotes. So for people who haven't attended Hint Summit, one thing that's a little bit different about our keynotes is we oftentimes bring in these very thought-provoking, different type of speakers who maybe you've never heard of. And so this year we have 2. Dr. Tom Mayer, he is he's had a wild life, but long and short of it is that he was part of the Pentagon rescue operation during 9/11, which is mind blowing. He was just like there, ground floor. He has led kind of mobile teams in Ukraine, treating patients during kind of this more recent instance. And then he also, his day job, if you will, outside of writing books and speaking at all these events, is he's the head of the NFLPA player safety and medical lead, effectively. So he's going to be super interesting guy to hear from. He's going to be talking a little bit about like leading, what it means to lead, and innovation, trust, perseverance around direct primary care. Someone who's actually pretty passionate around what we're doing as an industry, although he's not specifically working in it. He sees it, and he's really excited to kind of share some of his learnings and how they might coincide to DPC.
That sounds amazing. And like, what a background too. Like, how do you get all of those different experiences in one lifetime?
Exactly. I mean, it's wild. And then we're going to have Dr. Ted James. He is actually a pretty regular keynote speaker around transforming healthcare. He's a physician leader. He's an executive coach, a strategic advisor. He does a lot of different things, which is really cool. And he's very much aligned with kind of the future and the movement, how tech gets involved, AI, those types of things. So his talk is going to be called Skating to the Puck and Where It's Going to Be. And the patients of tomorrow. So what does it look like as technology becomes more prevalent in our day-to-day patient experience? How do we make sure that we are creating an experience that is geared for the patient of tomorrow? And I think that's going to be really interesting, a very thoughtful and exciting guy to hear from.
That's awesome.
And then last, we'll have Zach's keynote. So Zach Holdsworth, our co-founder and CEO, gives a keynote every year. Excited to hear about that. Not going to give away any secrets on that one yet, but I think that'll be a really fun and engaging talk, as it always is.
Last year was the AI one, right? With him and like going through. I mean, that was so cool to see, just it in action. Like, and I felt like that was kind of on the leading edge of the AI scribe experience.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. I don't think most people had seen that in practice before that. So I will be curious to see what Zach has to tell us.
Yeah, exactly. That was fun. It kind of took us through like a story, right? A timeline of sorts of like, hey, how quickly technology has changed over the centuries, over the decades, and how like now it's coming to a point where tech is happening every single day or every single minute, things of that nature, which is really cool. So beyond kind of just the talks and the engagement, we're going to have a really great networking lounge at Hint Summit. So a place where, hey, if maybe you want to go engage and spend some more time with folks, you can do that. We have, I think it's like over 30 something sponsors and kind of exhibitors at Hint Summit this year, which is awesome. Really excited and thankful for all of those groups that want to be a part of what we're doing and continue to make this a possibility. And then we got a few fun events that we're doing as usual. So this year we're hosting 2 events that are part of the program. The first one is called the Networking Party. Nice. That's going to be on the first night of Hint Summit, and that's going to be at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. So I am a huge museum buff. I love particularly the natural science kind of history museums. Those ones are more my vibe. But my kids like to go to like the Discovery museums and those are enjoyable too. But that event's it's gonna be sponsored by Nextera and Decent, and it's gonna be a super fun event. I mean, sorry, for you to ask a question about it.
No. I'm just excited to hear that is at the museum as well, because I love when you don't have to fight the crowds. You get to like experience the museum.
Exactly, right? Yeah, and so like we'll have food and cocktails, ribs, that kind of thing. We're going to be hosting some innovation awards during that time as well. And then the cool thing about the museum is you can just break off in groups and go explore. I'm pushing to do some sort of scavenger hunt. I think that might be a fun little twist on the evening and maybe recognize the winners on stage the next day.
I love it. Let's do a scavenger hunt. That sounds awesome. We can lead some like competing parties of scavenger hunties and make a huge thing of it.
I love it. And then after we kind of shut the doors on Hint Summit 2024 Saturday evening, we're going to be going to a closing party. It's at the Fiddler's Green, which is a local event venue. It's an outdoor music venue. And we're going to have we're going to be seeing 2 bands. So the National and the War on Drugs, 2 groups that I've been wanting to see for years, which I think is super cool that it just kind of coincided with Hint Summit this year. I'm really excited that event's going to be sponsored by Clearwater Benefits. And I think this year is just going to be another one for the record books. I think the last few years have been amazing, and the feedback and the engagement and what we've been able to do there. And so I'm just really excited to bring it all together again.
I can't wait. That sounds awesome too. Like having the closing party and having those 2 bands there. Gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So I think that's pretty much it on our preview for this year. One thing again, for everyone who kind of joined in or who's watching this second time around, we do have a discount code. It's going to be Summit Preview 24. That will get you a little bit of a discount, $50 off your ticket to Hint Summit. If you have any questions about planning, feel free to reach out to our team, summit@hint.com. And we're really excited to just welcome everyone and engage and spend time together this September.
I can't wait.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.